This is Fuzzy Tutorials, and I'm Fuzzy D. So today is November 19th, 2024. Now, it's been a little bit since I've made a video. The last one I did was the kind of that introduction to doing AI, like voiceovers and stuff, how to generate that. So since then, I know I promised some other AI content, and as I started looking into stuff and when I was looking at just some ongoing issues with Windows that was really starting to get on my nerves. So after looking into how much easier it is to do AI stuff in Linux and just the general nonsense that Microsoft has been doing lately, the recall feature and just more and more advertising and, just forcing us into all this telemetry and taking our data and all this stuff, right? And, the instability, how slow Windows gets over time, and, just one thing after another, and I was just sick of it. I've been sick of Windows as soon as they started forcing us to move to Windows 11. I really just, my annoyance levels kept going up, and I was just having constant issues and breakdowns on my system. And the only way I was going to fix it is if I completely wiped my system and started over. And I didn't want to do that without having, a bit of a backup to work from in case things went wrong. And then I figured, well, if I want to go through all this work and all this trouble to redo my system, maybe now's the time to switch out of Windows. Now, I've used macOS in the past. I've still got a couple of MacBook Pros kicking around. And, macOS in some ways is a lot better than Windows. In other ways, not so much. And, they've got their own little quirks about, locking you into stuff and forcing you to do what they want you to do. And they're getting even stricter about it with the newest versions of macOS. They're turning off the ability to load programs that aren't signed and accepted by them, which is completely ridiculous for a computer operating system. So I decided to go with Linux. Now, initially, I was going to actually go with a hypervisor called Proxmox and then run Linux underneath that, as well as virtual machines of Windows and macOS and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, when I got into it, I got Proxmox installed and, everything was kind of working, and I was, getting a feel for Linux. Now, I had installed an actual graphical desktop to use with it because I didn't have really a separate computer that I wanted to use to log into the web console for Proxmox. So I was running it locally, and everything seemed to be working. And then when I went to create my virtual machine and do a pass through the GPU, I discovered that there's a limitation. You have to have a second video source. So either you have to have a CPU with a built-in graphics card, like an Intel chip, and some AMD chips. Unfortunately, I've got an AMD system, so I didn't have one of those graphics chips, and I'm not going to buy a new processor just to get the built-in graphics, because it would have to be a downgrade, because I've got a 3900 XT, so 12 core. And I didn't have a spare slot to put another video card in, even just a cheap one, because I was using the only slot that was big enough, a by 8 slot that I'm using for one of my PCI adapters for NVMe. I've only got 2 NVMe slots on my motherboard, and I'm using 3 NVMe drives. So one is my old Windows boot drive, which I can still boot up on when I need to, and then I've got a bunch of drives in my system, hard drive spinning rust, And they're all still sitting on NTFS. Once everything is stable and I'm confident that I'm not going to have to probably go back to Windows very much, I'm going to start converting the drives from NTFS to possibly ButterFS, or I may just use the standard Linux XT4. So I've just been running into too many limitations, stuff that I'd like to be able to do that I can't do on NTFS drives. So going forward, I'll be doing that. So let's talk a little bit about the version of Linux I chose. You probably saw the thumbnail, or you're seeing the text up top here. So I went with Linux Mint 22. That's the latest version. And Linux Mint actually switched to Ubuntu as its base. I'm not sure what it was on before. I know it wasn't Ubuntu. It could have been Arch. I'm not sure. I just don't know Linux well enough. A couple of decades ago when I had web servers and, web design, I was part of a web design company and stuff. We had like a bunch of partners. And when I was doing that, I used to use Linux for the web servers, but I never used the graphical interface. It was all just, command line stuff and, for running the web servers. So, my daily driver was still Windows for the main stuff that I did back then. So, modern Linux, I have no experience with other than the last month when I started making these switches. So, I'd done a lot of research and I wanted something that was going to be fairly easy for me to switch over from Windows. So Linux Mint really fit that bill. So it uses the Cinnamon desktop interface, and it's got a look and feel very much like Windows 95. So let me give you a quick little tour here. Okay, let me just move this off to the other screen. If you look here, we've got a menu bar at the bottom, very similar to Windows 10. And the menu is very similar to Windows 10. And we've got, like the favorite section. I mean, it's laid out a little bit different, but it's quite similar, as far as look and feel. And you've got these different categories. And then you can take any one of these, say I wanted to have, let's say I wanted this out on my taskbar down here. To get it on the taskbar, I would just go add to panel, and then I'll add it to the taskbar. Now, as you can see, I've got OBS running on here, and I'm going to be doing a series of videos where I'm going to show you how I installed all the main packages on here. You'll notice I've got DaVinci Resolve, so I've got DaVinci Resolve Studio, and that's one of the packages that was an absolute must to be able to get running. Now, that was a bit of a challenge to get running under Linux Mint because it's got 3 or 4 distributions that it targets, and the rest of them it doesn't even try and support. But there is some guys out there that they take the run package that's created from Blackmagic, and they've got like a little program they've written to convert it to a deb package, and then you can install the deb package. So I'll be showing you guys how to do that. And I've got the GIMP and Inkscape, Handbrake. I've got the Discord app. I've got a few different messaging apps here. You probably recognize some of them. And of course, over here, we've got our Chrome. Now, I used to use Thorium in Windows, which is a fork of Chrome. And under Windows, it was much faster. Unfortunately, they don't have a version that really works very well in Linux. I had it working once, but then it had issues, and they're just not supporting Linux Mint. And I understand why now, because when I switched to just regular Google Chrome, it was much faster in Linux than it ever was in Windows. So Thorium in Linux Mint, or Linux in general, isn't really an advantage. So because the Linux version handles memory basically the same way Thorium did in Windows. So yeah, it's just kind of the way it is. Some stuff just doesn't work very well. Now, my favorite email program, which is actually a Windows, macOS, iOS app, not available in Linux. So what I did for that one program that I need is I set up a virtual machine, which is this right here. So I've got this in a saved state, so I can fire up my Windows email program that I like. So I just tell it to run, and it's restoring it from the disk exactly in the state it was in. So now I don't even have to boot it up and log in. There's my email program. I can get my mail. The one thing I really like about Spark is one, I'm a beta tester. When they did the Windows version, I signed up as a beta tester, and I just absolutely love this program. One of the nicest things about it is once you've set it up once on one machine, anytime you set it up anywhere else, you put in the first account and it loads everything in automatically and sets it up for you. Put your signatures in, the whole 9 yards. It's so easy if you're somebody like me who has multiple email accounts. I've got like, I don't know, 8 or 9 email accounts. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to save. And by saving that, that's how I save it in this state, so I don't actually have to boot up the virtual machine as such. So I'll be covering how to install QEMU Virtual Manager. It's by far the fastest, best running virtual machine setup out there. That's not like a hypervisor, like a Type 1 hypervisor. So I'll be showing you guys how to do that, and also getting OBS working with properly with all of the plugins and everything. It took me a while to get this figured out and get it all working, and I've got some people that I want to give a shout out to when I do the tutorial on how to do this. I got a lot of help from one particular guy that I want to really shout out, but I'll get to that. I don't remember the fellow's name right now, but I'll have that all lined up when I do that one. And for the AI stuff, I'm going to be showing you how to do more AI stuff, and I'm going to be installing it on my local machine here, or some AI stuff. This is one of the reasons I wanted to move on. This is another one of the reasons I wanted to move to Linux, was so that I can handle the AI stuff a lot better. It runs smoother and faster and more stably on a Linux box than it ever will on Windows. So I'm going to be installing Llama. I haven't got there yet. That's my next project. I had to get everything else working first, which kind of today, this morning I was still fixing some final things with OBS. So now, if you notice, it's a pretty complex setup here for my OBS. Luckily, I didn't have to rebuild this from scratch. I was able to pull it because I've got another one almost exactly like it for my other channel. So luckily, I was just able to fire up my Windows boot and export my setups, import them into here, change all the drive locations to match how Linux mounts the drives, and it was almost there. I still had to fix a few other things, but yeah, this worked really well. So I've got everything working here. The only thing I haven't tried to get working is my iPad as a fourth screen to use as my teleprompter. But at about the time I was doing all this, my really old Series 1 iPad or Gen 1 iPad. It's got some issues that have developed, and I don't think I could use it anymore anyway. So I'll probably have to come up with a better solution. But just about pretty much everything else is working as it should. My speed editor for DaVinci Resolve, it's not working under Bluetooth. I haven't really tried addressing it much, but it works when I plug it in with a USB cable. So I'm fine with that for now. And yeah, so that's pretty much where we're at. So big changes on my channel. And I know I didn't do any tutorials for a long time, but that's changing. I'm going to be, I'm trying to get a balance between the two big channels that are mine. Plus, I manage a couple others, so it's just finding the time to kind of rework everything and get everything kind of working the way I want to. So I do want to keep making stuff for this channel, so I hope you stick around. We're going to be doing some pretty fun stuff. And for those of you who are looking at moving to Linux from Windows, or even just to give it a try for a little bit, I'm no expert, but I can show you what I did and how I solved the issues that I ran into. But these are not going to be exhaustive lists of solutions. I'm no Linux guru. I borked my system a total of 4 times in this process that I had to restore from my backups. Luckily, Linux has a really nice system for doing backups called TimeShift. It's really good. It's just a quick little program, easy to use. So this is TimeShift. I've got it set up to back up my stuff hourly because, I was borking my system so regularly. And it was always happening when I was trying to solve issues. I would try something that I found online on how to fix something, and it wasn't quite compatible with my version and other stuff I installed. And so, yeah, I kept borking my system. So definitely make use of these backups. You can also do a manual one. So if you make a bunch of changes and everything's working great, then you can hit create and it'll do a whole new backup. And away you go. And it's really easy to restore. You can actually restore from the command line if you need to. And I've done that a couple of times. So I didn't have to actually break out my thumb drive and have to reinstall that to restore it. So yeah, it's easy to bork your system when you don't know what you're doing, but it's really easy to restore it if you've taken the right steps and you're using TimeShift. So I know, it's hard for me to remember back that far, but when I was first starting to learn Windows, I don't know how many times I borked my system. So, but that was back in the heady days I started with Windows for DOS, like DOS Windows. It was all like ANSI screens, 1.0. Now, I started with that. I was doing some programming for it. And then I went to Windows 3.0 and then 3.1 and then 3.11. I was on that for quite a while. And then I was kind of with Windows ever since. Back when I got back in the mid 2000s, I went with Mac for a while because of a client and a project and stuff. So, but I never, I was always, trying to use DOS or Windows and eventually MacOS. And as a daily driver, desktop operating system, Linux was never really on my radar. But I am so happy I made the move, despite the challenges and the issues and the learning curve and all that stuff. It's been well worth it. My system runs almost twice as fast on average for most things as it did before. I know DaVinci Resolve probably renders about 25% faster, than it did in Windows. And just scrubbing through the timeline is probably twice as fast as it used to be. So, yeah, I'm very pleased with the final results of this. Well, if you feel we've earned it, please take a moment to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the future videos we've got coming out. There's going to be some good ones. So we'll see you in the next one, folks. Bye for now.